Hi everybody, and welcome to part 4 of this 4-part series on graphs and statistics. This series is designed specifically for tutors who are working in the workplace. This module we're going to explore a learning sequence for use with graphs, charts and tables, and explore some instructional strategies for use with workplace graphs, charts and tables as well. Interestingly, in the workplace, employees are being asked to use graphs and tables more and more to determine what they do. And we've found that when working with groups of employees in the workplace, simply handing out a series of graphs, there might be workplace graphs or relevant graphs at least, is often a great way to initiate interest and engagement in what's going on. Something about a graph that seems to lead people who might be struggling with their numeracy or literacy allows them to look at it and get an idea of the graph straight away. In saying that, there's a very specific sequence of engagement that we've used which is highly successful. You don't have to use this, but it seems to be a good guideline for how to present graphs. The first thing is you'd ask your employees, learners, to describe the features of a graph. So that is, you've handed out a graph, a workplace graph, and you just want people to talk about what they notice. And it might be what type of graph it is. Are they familiar with this type of graph? You know, what are the axes measuring? What are the units of measure? And the conversation might be simple or it might be very complex. After that conversation, you want to move it into analyzing the data and having employees ask more critical questions about the graph or chart. And so these questions might include things like how large was the sample, when was it taken, what are the raw numbers, how is it categorized and why was it categorized like this, what are they choosing to represent and what are they choosing not to represent. So really leading into that more critical analysis of the data behind the graph. The third thing is having your employees draw reasonable conclusions based on the data. And so this might be things like if there's a clear trend showing in the graph, do they think the trend is going to continue? Do they think things will change? And what conclusions can you make based on what this graph is saying? And finally, if you have the opportunity to generate or manipulate a graph based on workplace data, a wonderful thing is to get employees to generate their own data in some way and then to make their own graphs based on it. And we saw in the previous module how you could do it with a box and whisker or a box plot graph just on chart paper. Chart paper with grids. You can have employees put together a whole lot of different types of charts to represent the same data, and that's often a very powerful tool. Also, if you have Excel available, some great things in Excel. For example, you can simply have the data already sitting within Excel, and because of the features of this you can simply go to insert a chart and the employees are able to select their own chart that will represent that data. So the data doesn't change, but they might decide to change the chart. And so what this does, this allows multiple charts and graphs to be developed based on the same data that they've generated. It's a really fantastic way of comparing graphs, seeing which ones are the best or which ones might highlight or hide key information. And also a great way to get people engaged in Excel and using Excel and comfortable with some of the features. So I would recommend that you explore Excel as a tool for learning. Fantastic in the workplace. Instructional strategies. This particular diagram that you see in front of you is found in the Teaching Adults to Listen and Speak to Communicate book. And what it does, it provides 6 different instructional strategies that you can use. And because with graphs and charts you really want to promote good, strong and robust conversations between employees, this book is packed full of great activities that would allow you to do that. And I would recommend, if you're short on ideas at all, that you have a flick through this book and pick a couple of the activities and they may even simply be starting points for further thinking, and all of them are fairly much highly appropriate for use with statistics, graphs and charts. I just wanted to talk about modelling very quickly. Modelling is a great way or a great strategy to use with graphs or charts, and the idea here, or how I've used it in the past, is I've handed out a particularly controversial or contentious graph. Something we used in the workshops was measures of poverty or household income, something that will get people's attention and is slightly controversial, and then you model how you unpack that particular graph. And once people see how you do that, they begin to get the idea very, very quickly. Another strategy is questioning, asking your learners or employees various questions to get them thinking and critiquing the graph a little bit more deeper. For example, what type of graph is being used and why? Why would they use this graph? What does this graph represent? What unit of measures are being used? What does the graph not show? And you might have a series of questions that you have pre-prepared, or you just generate as you're going, that really leads the employees into looking deeper into that graph. And finally, discussions. Interactive conversations in which the tutor and learner become joint constructors of learning. The fantastic thing with workplace instruction is your employees are likely to know far more about the data being used in the graph than you do. So you might come with particular knowledge about how the graph is constructed. They know about the data in the background, and so in that way both you and them can become joint constructors of learning, and you don't need to be the content expert per se, but just create great conversations. Finally, if you're running out of ideas or you're really struggling with this idea of statistics and graphs, the Learning Progressions resource book, Teaching Adults to Reason Statistically, is a fantastic tool. It's probably one of the most, I think anyway, underused books out there at the moment. If you don't have your own copy, or if your workplace doesn't have a hard copy, you can find online copies at literacyandnumeracyforadults.com, the website. PDFs are there, and this book is packed full of ideas about how to teach statistical understanding and reasoning, and lots of great activities to get people engaged in it and working through it. So finally, we've looked at a really brief learning sequence for use with graphs, charts and tables, really a series of questions that you would ask the employees. And also we've explored some instructional strategies, again questioning, modelling and discussion based. Using graphs with employees in the workplace seems to be a really successful and great way of getting engagement and relevance for learners. Certainly been hugely successful where I've seen it used. Wish you all the best on your continued use of statistics and graphs in the workplace, and I'm sure everything will go well.